The small town of Riverdale had always been known for its peaceful atmosphere and tight-knit community. Located just outside of Chicago, it was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name, and the local police department's biggest concerns were typically speeding tickets and the occasional shoplifting incident at the town's only convenience store. Officer Michael Dawson had been with the Riverdale Police Department for almost 15 years. He was respected in the community, known for his calm demeanor and fair approach to law enforcement. His partner, Officer Derek Wilson, was relatively new to the force, but had quickly proven himself as a dedicated and observant officer. Together, they handled most of the day-to-day policing needs of Riverdale with ease. It was a crisp October morning when the call came in. A disturbance at 42 Oakwood Drive, the Harrison residence. Michael and Derek had been to the Harrison home several times over the past few months. The calls always stemmed from Ethan Harrison, the 8-year-old son of Greg and Linda Harrison. According to his parents, Ethan had developed an obsession with calling 911, claiming that someone was tampering with the water supply in their neighborhood. "Do we really need to go out there again?" Derek asked, sighing as he grabbed his jacket. "This is the third time this month." "Protocol is protocol," Michael replied, though he shared Derek's frustration. Besides, Greg promised he'd have a serious talk with Ethan after last time. When they arrived at the modest 2-story house, Greg Harrison was already waiting at the door, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and exasperation. "Officers, I am so sorry," he said, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I don't know what's gotten into him lately. Linda and I have tried everything, taking away his tablet, grounding him. Nothing seems to work." Ethan appeared behind his father, his small frame partially hidden. His eyes were wide and fearful, not at all like the mischievous troublemaker the officers had expected. "There's a man," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He comes at night. He goes to the water tower. I saw him again last night. He had chemicals." Greg Harrison sighed heavily. "Ethan, we've been over this. There is no man. The water company does routine maintenance, that's all." Derek knelt down to Ethan's level. "Hey buddy, remember what we talked about last time? About only calling 911 for real emergencies?" "But it is real," Ethan insisted, tears forming in his eyes. "He wears a uniform, but it's not the right one. He doesn't have a truck like the water company. I'm not making it up." Michael exchanged a glance with Derek. They'd heard similar stories before. They'd even done a cursory check of the water tower area the first 2 times, finding nothing suspicious. "Ethan," Michael said gently, "the thing is, we can't keep coming out here unless there's an actual emergency. Your parents have checked, we've checked, and there's no one tampering with the water supply." "Have you checked the maintenance shed behind the water tower?" Ethan asked, his small voice suddenly clear and specific. "That's where he hides his stuff. I saw him put something in there yesterday." The specificity of this new detail gave Michael a moment's pause, but Greg quickly intervened. "Ethan, that's enough. Officers, again, I am so sorry for the trouble. I promise you we will make sure this doesn't happen again. Maybe you should consider taking him to talk to someone," Derek suggested quietly. "A counselor or therapist might help with these imaginative concerns." Greg nodded, giving Ethan a stern look. "We're actually looking into that. Linda has made an appointment for next week." After a few more minutes of conversation and another gentle warning to Ethan about the proper use of emergency services, Michael and Derek left the Harrison home. As they walked back to their patrol car, Derek glanced back at the house. "Poor kid. Do you think there's something else going on there? Anxiety issues, maybe?" Michael shrugged. "Could be, or just an overactive imagination. Either way, it's not our department. If the parents are getting him help, that's the right step." As they drove away, neither officer noticed Ethan's small face pressed against his bedroom window, watching them leave, his expression a mixture of fear and resignation as his gaze drifted toward the water tower visible at the edge of town. The 3 days later, Michael and Derek were completing routine paperwork at the station when the call came in from dispatch. "All available units to Riverdale General Hospital. Multiple patients arriving with unknown illness. Possible contamination event." The officers exchanged alarmed looks. They arrived at the hospital to find the emergency room in chaos. Medical staff rushed between beds, many wearing protective equipment. The hospital administrator, Dr. Alan Brenner, approached them as soon as they entered. "We've got 12 patients so far, all with the same symptoms," he explained, his voice tense. "Severe stomach pain, vomiting, disorientation. They're all from the same neighborhood, Oakwood Drive and the surrounding streets." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "Oakwood Drive? That's the Harrison family's neighborhood." Dr. Brenner nodded. "Yes, Greg and Linda Harrison were among the first admitted. Their son seems unaffected, though. Said something about not drinking the tap water because it smelled funny." Derek and Michael exchanged a stunned look. Ethan had been telling the truth all along. Within hours, the quiet town of Riverdale was transformed. The CDC was called in, the water supply to the affected neighborhood was shut off, and what had been a peaceful community was now the center of a public health emergency. As water samples were analyzed and patients were treated, a disturbing truth emerged. The water supply for that section of town had been deliberately contaminated with a chemical compound that wasn't immediately lethal but caused severe illness. The contamination had been carefully targeted to affect only the Oakwood Drive neighborhood. The realization hit Michael like a physical blow. Ethan Harrison had been telling the truth all along, and they had failed to listen. Director Special Agent Thomas Ramirez of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division took over as lead investigator. With broad shoulders and calculating eyes that assessed everything methodically, he had the kind of presence that demanded attention and respect. "What we're dealing with isn't random," he explained in the hastily assembled command center at the Riverdale Police Department. "This was deliberate, targeted, and executed with knowledge of the local water infrastructure. Someone knew exactly what they were doing." "And Ethan knew," Derek said quietly. "He saw something the rest of us missed." Agent Ramirez nodded grimly. "Children often notice things adults overlook. They're more attentive to their surroundings in certain ways, less distracted by what we consider important." The investigation revealed more disturbing details. A search of the maintenance shed behind the water tower yielded empty chemical containers, detailed maps of the town's water system, and a set of tools that had been used to access the supply lines. "What about security cameras?" Michael asked during one briefing. "The water company must have some monitoring system." "They do, but our perpetrator was careful," Agent Ramirez replied. "The cameras were disabled for what appeared to be routine maintenance. No alarms were triggered because the access codes were used correctly." The investigation seemed to hit one dead end after another, until 3 days after the contamination was discovered, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Emma Patel, a 9-year-old girl who lived on Oakwood Drive, approached a police officer canvassing her neighborhood. Like Ethan, she had noticed a stranger at the water tower. Unlike Ethan, she had done something about it. She had taken pictures with her tablet. The images showed a man in what appeared to be a water company uniform, but with subtle differences from the official uniform. In one photo, the license plate of his unmarked van was visible. "I thought he was suspicious because he came at night," Emma explained. "The real water people only come during the day, my dad says." This small lead exploded the case wide open. The license plate led to a vehicle registered to Victor Mercer, a former employee of the regional water treatment facility, who had been fired 5 years earlier for misconduct. Further investigation revealed that Mercer had a grudge against several community members in the Oakwood Drive neighborhood who had served on the local utilities board at the time of his dismissal. A week after the contamination was discovered, surveillance footage from a hardware store 30 miles outside of Riverdale captured the image of Mercer purchasing similar chemicals to those found at the water tower. Credit card records showed he was staying at a motel just across the state line. The arrest was conducted at dawn. FBI tactical teams and local law enforcement surrounded the motel. Mercer surrendered without resistance, almost as if he had been waiting for them. What they found in his motel room revealed the full extent of his plans. Detailed maps of water systems for 3 other communities, each with marked neighborhoods. Lists of names, all former colleagues or board members he blamed for ruining his career. chemical formulas showing progressively more dangerous compounds he planned to introduce into the water supplies. Mercer's scheme wasn't just about revenge. He had been documenting the effects of each contamination, building up to what appeared to be a much larger attack. His journal revealed that Riverdale was just a test case. He had been gauging response times, effectiveness of the chemicals, and how quickly the contamination would be linked to the water supply. The investigation revealed that Mercer had been planning this for years, gradually acquiring the knowledge, materials, and access needed to carry out his plot. What he hadn't counted on was an observant 8-year-old boy who noticed things out of place. In the aftermath, as the affected residents recovered and the water system was thoroughly cleansed and secured, Michael Dawson couldn't shake the weight of guilt that had settled on his shoulders. During a debriefing session, he finally voiced what had been haunting him since the night the first patients arrived at the hospital. "We should have listened," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Ethan Harrison told us exactly where to look, and we dismissed him. If we had checked that maintenance shed when he mentioned it, we might have prevented all of this." Agent Ramirez regarded him thoughtfully. "Officer Dawson, guilt is understandable, but it's not productive. What's important is what we learn from this. The child noticed something was wrong before any of the adults did. That's a lesson all of us in law enforcement need to take to heart." In the months that followed, the Riverdale Police Department implemented new protocols for handling reports from children. Michael and Derek became advocates for taking children's concerns seriously, speaking at law enforcement conferences about their experience. Ethan Harrison, once dismissed as a boy who cried wolf, was now recognized as the first person to detect a dangerous threat to the community. Though the experience had left him with anxiety, he found some healing in knowing that his persistence had ultimately prevented what could have been a much larger tragedy. 1 year after the incident, the Harrison family still lived in the same house on Oakwood Drive. They had considered moving, but decided against it. As Linda Harrison explained to a local reporter doing a follow-up story, running away wouldn't teach Ethan the right lesson. "We want him to know that his home is safe again, and that when he speaks up, people will listen." Michael made it a point to stop by the Harrison house regularly, not as an officer responding to a call, but as a friend checking in. On one such visit, he found Ethan playing basketball in the driveway. "Nice shot," Michael called as Ethan's ball swished through the net. Ethan smiled, a genuine expression that had become more frequent as the months passed. "I'm getting better. Dad set it up lower so I can practice." Michael picked up the ball and handed it back to the boy. "Ethan, I never properly apologized to you. I should have listened when you told us something was wrong." Ethan dribbled the ball thoughtfully before responding. "Mom says everybody makes mistakes, even grown-ups." "That's true. But some mistakes have bigger consequences than others." Ethan nodded with a wisdom beyond his years. "I learned something too, though. Even if people don't believe you at first, you have to keep telling the truth." As Michael drove away from the Harrison home that day, he reflected on how a child's warning, initially ignored, had exposed a dangerous plot that might otherwise have affected thousands of lives. It was a humbling reminder that sometimes the most important voices are the ones we're least inclined to hear. In the years that followed, whenever a child reported something unusual or concerning in Riverdale, the responding officers would remember Ethan Harrison and the day they regretted not listening to a child's warning, the beginning of something none of them could have imagined. The case became required reading at the police academy, a powerful lesson about the consequences of dismissing information based on its source rather than its content. And in Riverdale, a small town forever changed by what had happened, people learned to pay closer attention to the concerns of their children, recognizing that sometimes the most accurate observers of our world are those we too often fail to take seriously.